¿Qué hago?
Esto aquí, por favor.
Kiwa pechening ayun jak selama prolmazo dasan cengkul la terama la jepa kulle kapteso rang choke yen par mashe pare senyong wonder jerpai makor warkam pesam challa yum lama chochi chapte sol toning jela machi paratanya chege jedrang prakanyam pele palla yum ganga gelamo chapte sol kopara kawarang yesan Onne kumpare cepa Jawa nyempe yempala Yum drempela mo chaptuso Sembrang yung yime yashela Niso jimpe bachaki Kitare chekyang chingpanang Kung yime chila mo chaptuso Yandage tola meche chanju prangan mekan meshate Soche tola mumpala Yunjung jantila mo chaptuso Protral nam keita nichan Tam chagata nyermechi Datong hop magang salna Yun son zan jeji chaptesa Om tare tu reso 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 Om tare tu reso
오 잡을링거 자자카라 요바 담변에더니 산제가 홍제나나 들이 삼제가 장소 전부들이 삼제가 조방버 니마예 다시들에 롱
So to all my friends here and also joining us on the live stream, I'm offering you this ocean of nectar that is loving kindness coming from the Buddha's begging bowl. And Dashidele to all of you and long life.
Thank you. Thank you. 다른 산적생소 사적생고 예고 그러더니 저당 Khenpoche 다 참아 송요래 저당다다 자와 담제 진보도 참여 고요래 변은 직진 수공 그러더니 거기서는 세 탑인데 마제 사면이로 거기가 용가에서 제가 제체 sem지주로 삼바던 이게 탑인데 이 마제 내야 공점나더니 sem게 참아로 과제를 참아 삼제다 동담된바다 고독된바 삼바 세미다 동담거된바 이스베베 시지게 저거로 과자고요. 디마들이 세나세 탑이데 마제 살미 레저서 제대로 공부되니 서사와랑 니니테서 말이 다대사 저도면도 거기 제조통마 포르드 정보고시 인제 무제 대 정나가리 니는 롱마테라 수남 타고지 사제 탐체를 줘봐 제발 메스 통르게 대 고초성 랑상 지스트 막 포르드는 요거요스 강리들 온데 상제가 포레스 나게 뒤는 통고요다 나 괜히 말이지 다 나까지 거리다 왜 심지를 제와 거리다 뒤 추티 마지 내 상제 지스트 막 추지스트 막 삼닝지 내리 괜히 다랑 안 괜히 라포를 맞잡어도 나 괜히 봐이 괜히 봐라 가리들 심지 사방 제와 거리스 내가 대지 때와도 좋아 답보자 거리에서 이렇게 들은 적대수 탑 제parti 포르티포르티를 들고 근데 다시 뭐래 원초선 제대로 되면 지금 포르 하자 다시 뭐래요
So today we come to the Bodhisattva Vow, and so about that also Garchen Rinpoche explains that to you, and also we can understand a lot of that through His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And so what Lord Jigten Sumgyen said was, he said that when you act, everything you do should become an accumulation of merit. And when you do not act, everything is accomplished spontaneously. So when you act with body, speech, and mind, how does everything become an accumulation of merit? It is when whatever you do it with a mind of love and compassion for all sentient beings. Or if you do not act, if you just sit and meditate, you can help sentient beings through the mind. So as on the relative level, that means on the relative level we must cultivate loving kindness, and on the ultimate level we must settle in non-dual primordial wisdom. And in that way we are also helping sentient beings. So also Lord Jigten Sumgyen, he had always held this begging bowl, and he had said that all of his followers must also hold such a begging bowl that they use for drinking and eating. Whoever pours something into that begging bowl accumulates great merit. It's no different than making an offering to the Buddha himself. And then the one who drinks from this begging bowl remembers the three jewels. So it's the begging bowl of the Buddha, so you remember the Buddha. And then when you drink from that bowl, you remember, I'm a Sangha, so therefore what must I do? I must cultivate love for all sentient beings. So you're remembering the Dharma. So you remember the Buddha, you remember the Dharma, which is love and compassion, and then you also remember the Sangha, because you are the Sangha, especially once you have taken the refuge vow. And what does a Sangha need to do? A Sangha needs to possess love for all sentient beings, and patience that protects this love. So this is a special instruction by Lord Jigten Sumgön to hold this begging bowl, and that is why I'm also considering it as very precious.
산제들이 세르체보서 풀나 산제요 몇 개가 따고 말이지 십기들이 삼흥제 대해서 제라 오 들이 산제 경목에 그래지 그래 산제는 주변 초 이는 십기는 삼흥제를 때려야지 그 십기들 삼흥제 제라 들이 샘대 이제 적연배 들이 삼제 제나 들이 사마 핑바다 나와지는 사마 넣어봐 별은 니네니 밑에는 무슨다고 뭐 초대는 들이 몇개 고소라고 해서 미참아 좀 보는 거 자들이 담색대 그 조바탐제 담색대 삼아야지 이 삼제대 조인비 이들이 고소들이 해당 답을 듣바면 조바다고 같은 내에서 그 조상 적선도 다 침보니면 되게 사진 조바 대 책임은 비바도 대 사진 조건 초대 이제 대하고 그래서 이서 차초초를 이제 이 가래 피는 사지를 심지를 핀 거고요. 사지 고도 강해요 말은 나가래. 옛날에는 심지를 핀 바더니 되게 고도 좁은 초에 말이 들이 때에다가 잠을리는 따다다 주롱 잠을 좀 봤던 거요. 그 수름 쏘고요. 저방 참마 사지 좁은 초에 때에 대하고는 실제로 심지는 상황이 얘기되지 그치 뭐래 했더니 산쪽 색보이면 되나 랑라 핀바다 얘는 대화지 양 얘는 핀바다 랑라 대화 되지 저거리 산쪽 색보이면 돼 랑라 핀바다 얘는 대화지 랑게 다지 색도 거리 차로는 저 잡도록 템기 잡고요 얘는 이 상태에 그 참망을 빼나 또 참망 상태에 팽기요 참망을 세면 차로는 저 거리 산쪽 색보이고 랑라 핀바다 얘는 대화서
So regarding this mind of Bodhichitta now, the most supreme offering that we could make to the Buddhas is to benefit and bring happiness and benefit to sentient beings. And for example, it is said that if you would offer to the Buddhas a large piece of gold, they wouldn't even look at that. But if you cultivate just a little bit of love and compassion for sentient beings, then that would make the Buddhas smile. So if you have love for sentient beings, you will actually benefit them because our minds are actually one. Because our minds are one, if you have loving kindness, you will naturally benefit all. And if your mind is full of hatred, you will naturally harm all beings. For example, if there is a gathering of people and just one of them gets angry, then that harms them all, then everyone becomes unhappy. And that is actually a breach of samaya. So that is part of keeping our samaya. And that's really most important. It is that there is no greater harm or evil than anger, and there is no greater practice than patience. So bodhicitta, therefore, is really most precious. If you have bodhicitta, that itself is the greatest offering you can make to the Buddhas, and the greatest benefit you can bring to sentient beings. Even if you just give rise to a little bit of compassion for a small sentient being, it is a great benefit. So that is what the Buddhas want. They want us to benefit sentient beings. The Buddha themselves don't really need any other offering. They are like space. Their mind is like space, and they have no difficulties, no needs. But if you benefit other sentient beings, you're actually making the greatest offering to those Buddhas. And so in this world, there are many different religions, and all of them practice aspects of generosity and ethical discipline and patience and so on. And so all of these really become supreme offerings to the Buddhas. So it's very important to cultivate love and compassion for all sentient beings. The quality of bodhicitta is that it brings your own benefit and the happiness of others, or the other way around, the benefit of others and your own happiness. It is all the same, really. If you have bodhicitta, then the ice block of self-grasping will melt and merge into one with the ocean water. And it is only loving kindness that will actually benefit others. And the benefit you bring to others is that through your love, the ice block in the mind of other beings will also melt. So that is how you bring a benefit to yourself and happiness to others.
tekta yore yenna yang teni tata daji idin teni tata samara samte keto kapo yore pe sama temi di nangni ta sancho temi domano semji tamchira saba samsa samse ugosi semji tamchira samse una samse tega yinkare teni tata toni garangi samse garangi toni kare dina 다 지금 나오는 거지 요리 나한테 막아지는 내가 잡고 내가 나고 포를 나데 인체 매바 카보는 이거 요리 딱 버리고 가면 동지 요리다 나 뭐데 되게 막 와서서 들이 박차르더니 들이 다다 선웅적이 나 비선체 상체 박차르더니 들이 잡은 거래 들이 저희 잡으면 들이 차서 대연도 매들이 당원 300g 이제 하고는 오 300g 이제 주래 당디그람 이제 작업을 해 내려가서 뭐 당거래.
And so bodhicitta is nothing else but loving kindness. And it is actually a quality that we possess within Buddha nature. So our Buddha nature is empty in essence, and also it has the quality of loving kindness. But now, because we still possess a dualistic perception of self and other, it is very difficult for us to cultivate loving kindness for everyone, to cultivate immeasurable love. And so when we take the Bodhisattva vow, however, it is said we must actually cultivate loving kindness for all sentient beings. And when loving kindness for all beings arises, what is its nature? The actual nature of loving kindness is emptiness. And so emptiness of what? So there is this concept of an I. We think that there's an I, a me, a self that actually exists. And that constantly is there. Everything is mine. For example, that's my cup of tea and so on. Everything is what is mine. And this me arises non-stop, continuously. And it accumulates just like snowflakes falling down. So we have accumulated a lot of me that has created a strong habitual tendency in our mind. So the entire universe and all sentient beings are created by these habitual tendencies or karmic imprints. On the our mind temporarily has become like a block of ice. So first we need to understand the nature of loving kindness. Its nature is also heat, the heat that melts the ice block. The nature of self-grasping is ice. So that is what we first need to understand.
산촉세도 짜치 보이면 방법 산촉세도 강리 종 하고 요래 내려더니 뒤섬에 산지 장미 봐야네 산지 봐도 샘이 송아래 샘들 들이더니 나지 니차 내려 용목적들 단 도와를 차봐 산지 하고 그래 대야 하고나 뒤다 자완이 다다 등이 말이 다대도는 저 나디들의 성도 그 대치고 따라 삼대 코나래 대 상태 총총적인 변금도 그 사바 체비하고도 그 사바 체비만 넣으니까 생포 남카랑지 생포랑지 남카랑지 이랑 토고도 다다 라왕 잡은 라왕 요 말이 사제 생 남카다 내롱 통들이 생거라왕 토고 요래 생을 제시비가 하고 요래 대회들이 대형 통제들이 사적서 싸고 소소 대라티니 당부 상척도 턱지 저기서 주사게 답지 토마니니 상대는 이제 파 상성 그 셈나 가다가 내 토고도 대리 제시야 뭐 대리 하고 그래 동네 남도 그서 남도 대리 제일 남나지 대 하고 좀 매발도 토고도 그래 대다 다들 다니는 거 용보다 게 상태가 너트분도 배남 마포니라 마데가 포고티도 나 깔리 카체들 호도실랑 도요 말이 들이 어디 삼제 용티게 포고스지어나 지와 용티 됐다고 해지 들이 나보자 토고네 오당 마가 포삼사들 이 나보자부터로 쉽지 탑질 삼제 광 오고스다지 버려 삼네 대사모 때문에 들이 사고 탈라 들이다다리 다다다 수남사데 그럼사데 다다 사제 탐지 삼제에 있었다 그러지 동당그 대마는 남가다 그래 사제 탐지 추가라 사노네 그 탐지 삼제에 집에 탑대서 뭐 들이다들 제베 삼제에 가와제도 들이 제베 삼제에 돈도에는 마가 벌어 버거 말아 삼제에서 마가 벌어 삼바리와 마가 벌인데 와데 내가 데리고 거잖아 저쪽 샘지 삼제는 마다 벌인 듯이 샘지 탐체를 마다 보이던 듯이 정말 들이다 사바 체메디 제가 사바 체메디 하고는 들이다 사바 체모 영어리 내려드는 샘지 탐체 동네 때로는 초고요래 초로 뒤걸려서 강이 오sem지 동네 나가 토로 영어리 얘는 대디 이게 되게 지청을 들이 이 샘지 탐체 동네 이제 다니면 차롬도 셔터거리 이 사족들이 나왔다고 차로 내리들이 당부 사족도 덕기 사제 탑제 다 사족스로 짜지 버리 소문데 이걸 봐도 잠이서는 초사들 다 상태에다 뭐 지압을 때 상태에 정말 다 들리네 잠이서는 초다 레다 버지요 납자마다 버지요 납자지 디자들 상태에 초라를 맞다면 뭐다 뭐나 또 때 상태에 싸도 초라다는 말이야 돌아마당 욕탈 들리다 까바들한테 사지 동전이 상제 들이 다음에 봐도 다 상제 사지 것은 거다니 남가다고 죽은 남가다고 상제 쓰던 남가다고 그래 로그 자통다고 들으더니 용왕가에 가면 참 이깔리가네 때랑 그 딱고 나와는 통도가 들이들 내가 침바 때와 내가 부담 줘봐요 봐 들이대를 뚫거되는 들이 적대에 가면 들이 샘도 냠대 때 적대에 가면 딱 남방나서 뚫거 남방나서 강들 때를 때도 봐들 들이 대 삼태에 빼면 탑 들이 동네 동안 들이 뚫거되 나와서 사제 거스가 다니데 매일 소화 말이 나갔다고 추가를 갔다고 요는 지금 롱거 자통다고 저더니 답고서 나사다 사다 롱거 그걸 다 라망고 라탑제데 롱거 사야지 말이 뭐지 말 롱거 들고 무슨 매너리 삼바된 얘기 포팅이 지내서 뭐지 접대는 거만 대체 속은 샘데 저는 매지 속되는 애들이 샘도 삼제래 데이터와 하고 다 교까지 샘도 거서 생지지 말이야 사지세지 정지 제일 삼제를 제로 데이터 롱거당 저거당 무슨 용토도 없어 하고 그리고 영태다 답절 다낭제를 드리다 다 적대 감탐체데 이제 사제 그람지래 오저 로버트 말하는 거 자당 똑같이 드리도 괜나 만나서 적대 감지 대도 만나서 다 방법은 거요래 대통령 탑다 대로 하고는 대팅을 다 잡지는 다 잡문이 돼서 다 삼제래 무슨 동네에도 나한테 이 삼제의 가리 지도 딱 우리 삼제의 상말이 그거는 알아서 다음 자들이 다치서 보여 말이야. 때려 소리 길이 되서 보여 말이야. 내 마치에 비박 내 탑가래 돼. 자들을 상무들 된지 된수 무슨 야로 탐칭으로 통을 자고 보도. 자들 동사신들이 다 오시고 다당만 송바리 다당도 다당거리잖아. 네 고토 같은 송바리 해.
So when we take the Bodhisattva vow, then we first have to understand the preciousness of Bodhichitta and how does Bodhichitta arise. So the mind of Bodhichitta arises from our own mind. And that is actually the mind of all the Buddhas of the 3 times. So all the Buddhas of the 3 times arise from that mind. And the Buddhas have realized that when that mind believes in the reality of self and other, a dualistic existence, then that creates the 6 realms of samsara. All suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. All suffering comes from self-grasping. And the only way to eliminate self-grasping is through loving kindness. But our limited love is of not so much benefit. We need to cultivate immeasurable love for all sentient beings. And then the mind will truly attain freedom. And so the mind that is like space will attain freedom. Now we think in a certain country we experience freedom, but we do not experience actual freedom until we have realized the nature of our mind. And when you realize the nature of mind, you will also realize that the mind is beyond birth and death. And so the mind of Bodhichitta is something that we need to cultivate, accumulate. And this is what the Buddhas of the past have done. In the beginning, they all gave rise to the mind of Bodhichitta. They realized that I must eliminate self-grasping. I must benefit all sentient beings. So this is how it's started for them, with this motivation in mind. So we must bring Bodhichitta to mind in this way. So a real feeling arises in our mind. And with this feeling, we must collect loving kindness. It is just that as ordinary beings, we don't know how to collect loving kindness. But it's something that we need to manifest in our mind. And in which kind of vessel do we collect loving kindness? We collect loving kindness in the empty vessel of the mind itself, the empty space-like vessel of the mind. And a method to collect or increase our loving kindness is to practice dedication and aspiration prayers. These ensure that we will not lose our merit. Because otherwise, if we have done something good, we might feel some pride and think that I did this or that. And then there is the self-grasping again. We all have it. So that is what we need to eliminate first. And when there is no more self-clinging, then the mind itself is actually the Buddha. So the Buddhas first gave rise to a wish to benefit all sentient beings. That is the enlightened intent of all the Buddhas of the 3 times. So first they cultivated bodhicitta, then second, in the middle, they accumulated great merit throughout 3 endless aeons. And in that, all the Buddhas are the same too. And in the end, they all attained enlightenment. They're all the same. Even though you might have millions of Buddhas, they all are the same. And all spiritual masters are also the same. For example, a spiritual master's body represents the Sangha, and the speech represents the Dharma, that is the teachings on the twofold truth, and the mind represents the Buddha. So where is the Buddha actually? The spiritual master is the actual Buddha. And how is the spiritual master's mind? The mind is the Buddha. When you recognize that, you realize that actually, then I'm the Buddha too, because I also have that mind. My mind is also the Buddha. I realize that when sang means to purify or clear away dualistic grasping, And ye, the second syllable, means to be expansive. So once there's no more dualistic grasping, the mind is expansive like space, and you realize that there is no birth and no death. And that all suffering is just created by our thoughts. So when you recognize that all suffering is just a thought, it's just like a wave, then you also know that it will go away again. It can be eliminated, it can go away. So self-grasping and the afflictive emotions must be tamed with a mind of loving kindness. And so where do we find this mind of loving kindness? We can first find it between a mother and her child, the love that a mother and her child share. No matter how troublesome a child may be, the mother will never hate her child because she loves her child. That is the quality of love. So that connection of mother and child is what we bring to mind first. The way a mother loves her child and how a child loves and their mother. But then the fault that many make is that they think it's my child. So we should instead take that love and think that all sentient beings are my child, are just like that. And if you think in this way, then it is that this is how we accumulate great merit. So the Buddhas have love for all sentient beings. And with that great love, they attained enlightenment. All the Buddhas attained enlightenment in the Dharmakaya. So they abide all together within this space-like Dharmakaya nature. That is the ultimate truth. The relative truth is love and compassion, or a method to cultivate love and compassion. And so love and compassion arises first between the love between a mother and her child, the love that exists between a mother and her child. Even in an animal, for example, the way an animal mother loves her child. But there is a very special connection where we begin to cultivate true love for all beings, and then from there we must cultivate love and compassion. This kind of love, like a mother and child love, for all sentient beings, seeing all sentient beings like our own children, and that is what we then call the immeasurable love or great love. And when great love arises in your mind, you will also become aware of other people's suffering. Their suffering will also come to your own mind. Much compassion we have for others, it will melt the ice block. It is like the sun that melts the cause of suffering for all sentient beings. When we feel compassion for sentient beings, it is because they suffer. And the cause of their suffering is self-grasping. And that is melted away by the sun of Bodhichitta. So again, the Buddhas first cultivated Bodhichitta, the mind of enlightenment. They regarded it as very precious. Then second, the Buddhas accumulated great merit throughout 3 endless aeons. And so what they accumulated was loving kindness. They always held on to loving kindness. It is said the Buddha took on 500 impure and 500 pure incarnations before attaining enlightenment. And during all these lifetimes, he never allowed his love to become spoiled. He protected this love also through the power of aspiration prayer. And then in the end, finally, in this aeon, our Buddha then attained complete enlightenment. He realized selflessness. He became the embodiment of the 3 kayas. The Dharmakaya is like space. The Sambhogakaya is like a rainbow in the sky, pervading the 5 elements. So with that realization, the Buddhas are able to see everything as pure. The Buddha possesses the qualities of perfect omniscience, perfect compassion, and perfect power to grant protection. So that is the Sambhogakaya. And then the Nirmanakaya appears directly in this world to benefit beings here. There's many different kinds of nirmanakayas, but they all appear to tame beings according to their needs, to increase their loving kindness. They all are embodiments of the three kayas, really. That's what a Buddha is. And that manifests, for instance, as the infinite Pure Lands and Sambhogakaya mandalas inhabited by many deities. And even though you might have millions of deities, they all have a single nature. So that's the Sambhogakaya. And the Nirmanakaya appears, for example, in the human world directly and benefits beings there. And actually anyone, any male with compassion is Chandresic, and any female with compassion is Tara. Because the mind is most important. It's not the body. It's the mind of loving kindness. And so on the Dharmakaya level, my own mind is connected to the mind of all the Buddhas and all sentient beings. All beings are actually Buddhas. But we establish or recognize this connection through cultivating loving kindness. Through loving kindness, then from the Dharmakaya, that Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakayas can appear. So in this way, we also cultivate a pure perception toward anyone that we encounter, because everyone has the nature of Buddha. Everyone is ultimately Buddha. Beings are only obscured by adventitious, by temporary stains. So temporarily, because they develop thoughts of attachment and anger, they experience a great variety of happiness and suffering in this world. The only true protection is loving self-grasping. So the kind of love that we need to cultivate is a love for all, even our enemies. So normally we can cultivate love, but it's very difficult to cultivate love for our so-called enemies. But we need to cultivate love for them first and foremost. Lord Chigden Sumgen actually, this is how he composed this prayer that we read in the Yellow Prayer Book, the Dakdangma, the first prayer, in the opening prayers. He wrote this prayer to highlight this point, how important it is to cultivate love and compassion first and foremost for our enemies. This is really the beginning and point of cultivating bodhicitta.
Jala yiki kego to hadang dungchen bo di jokari jate ne lok shitala tri chia ngama rang hatjang tenche pama yiki ta rang ge to bo mo de la so hajo chia che to tang che la ni teng tang te ka che te du pama da bo ja se me pama da bo ja yo ma re pama da bo ma ja no pama che ka re pe ja yo cha le ja ma se te ta ri sam che de control jo ro yo re 대 컨트롤은 저서면 대기와 스마트리 다다다 다다지와는 다 세바소들이 자좀 바꾸려나 조반노들이 자디 다다다디 자타면 데리 용무요래 데리들이 자대가 콘 다다 자르저데리 데리들이 데리다 다고 지와 나서 캐리 세븐 시점에 바테 캐리 세븐 시점에 바죠 데리들 지와 나서 캐리 데리 대동이가 캐리는 캐리잖아 세븐 시점에 막 캐리다 데리 좀 캐리인 거고요 캐만을 말이 그래서 다 지와 나서 레좀 제 매번 따완 잡는 게 봐도 요 말이 라리 따와데 지와 나서 매 레좀 제 매서 오다고 그랬지 대시는 잡는 따와 찍 봐도 요 말이지 그 뭐 참아들이 레좀 제 캐리인 거요 대회는 데려더니 오 다다 하점 뒤쳐리야 그래서 담주 담으로 망보요래 담주 방방을 오네요 데려더니 다다서 자지 뭐리 다들 브랑거 파마트인죠 파마트리 마소바데 해서 대선은 다 데려더니 고온도 고솔리사 상고 고루세고 피노도 그리 다다다 되나 드리더라 다베추드별들이 다는 노바당 거 요마 페이거도 거 요래 정미리 몇서 말에 제로도 제바 토당에 본동지 다다 라리 소주면서 소거리 게블론 조도 그 자스티 노디 당연히 히테다도 자들 노바당 되나 계산 주바고로 되게 사석터지 자동 판도 그랬더니 주바들이 되게 삼те 양 판도 그래 There is Sanjay Jomdi there, Sanjay Tamse, do Jari Jariso, Jadikari, Numa would do, Pum would do, Sadaga do, Flight would do, do Jetimons in Kowacha and we are they very Jari, Sabda, George Midtown, or Samuel Sidabeba Harkoson. Sam communication men and young, they don't throw out the letters in young though. They know do me, they know do me, that couple gave late to a dinner. They come to tourists of the young do your Tato Sunday or Tato, they in a part or that of your day. There is this song took this song one of the that's so that's about Sebigilla. Oh, drought so you message and the pingo, some similar toward the subject, that's some jet is about Sebi. This just the same song. This is same thought. This is reviving. Jati mayana benako. Jati didn't call to the mambo. Cha jammy to the kaka chop my chava to the marshama. They didn't call us on some theory. They let the Chia terribly. Oh, the Ligia, boy, the Hojo, Kado, Nemo. But you could pass your tattoo so tired. David Jerty. That I never just a demartero. Don't look on me, people, they were to leave this. I took away within the jungle. They have got jetty. Oh, that is a subject. They were that they were just a demarcated. Chula, they were going to something that was jobs. Something they were going to see on the terrible. There is David to it, they talk already. Tata charge, and they have maturity, language, Choatang, little name, but similar to name, but something, something getting there is. This something getting there. The meeting which is new about it. New will less at what they told Java Mapa Bukana, no worries. They wrote that they didn't parade. Ding landed under such a maze or such a ding about the age of days. They are teachers that the beer is up someone. Oh, Zabalan took in tongue, Mambo Dabna, Mahmoud of the town, Masade, or a pillar. They lay Masala, or Migi or Mary. Lay Saja, Jawo Tabi Jakan and said, oh, you're a pillar. Goso Mambo, then later, Rawa Mibadi. Even Jim Daly, Chichina, this are talking to the boy, Jatokuri. They judged the Zuba to Gori. They were later, Dublin, Dar something on the day, starting with sort and their.
So we must cultivate compassion first and foremost for our enemies. And for that we need to understand the nature of our enemies. It is said that in a previous life, these enemies have been someone extremely kind to us. Someone who has loved us very much. For example, our parents, a teacher, a close friend. And we have not repaid their kindness, their love. So we have not protected the love that we had. For example, now we can see sometimes when parents look after their children when they're still young, then later they do not look after those children when after they have grown up, and then the children don't look after the parents. So first the parents look after the children, but then they don't care about their parents. And then it's very possible that the parents who first had so much love for their children, all of that love becomes anger. They become resentful. First I cared for them and now they don't care for me. And then in the next life, these parents will be born as your enemy, as like a karmic creditor. There's different kinds of karmic creditors. There's those karmic creditors that come for your life because you have taken their life, or there are those karmic creditors who come for your wealth, your possessions, because you have taken their possessions in the past, and so forth. There's different kinds of karmic creditors that may appear as an enemy to come and collect their karmic debt. So when we reflect on that, we first need to recognize, accept that the mind cannot die. When you recognize that the mind cannot die, then you will also recognize that there are past and future lives, because the mind cannot die. And then that necessarily leads you to accept karma, cause and effect, that certain actions lead to happiness while others lead to suffering, then you can't help but accept karma, cause and effect when you reflect on this. Actually, most people in the world really do believe in karma. There is just one view in this world that denies the existence of karma and past and future lives, and that is called like the barbarian view. And they kind of a materialistic view. There are those who believe that this life is just like a flower and that will wither. But aside from that kind of view, really most everyone else really believes in karma, cause and effect. So this so-called enemy was someone extremely kind to us in a previous life. And that's for this reason, we must recognize this enemy as somebody very dear, somebody very kind, like a parent for whom we have not repaid, to whom we have not repaid their kindness. So because we have not repaid their kindness, now they come back as karmic creditors to collect their karmic debt. So for a Dharma practitioner, really, an enemy is not someone harmful. It's actually someone very beneficial. Jigme Lingpa had said that for a practitioner, all hindrances and obstructors or enemies are like a stepping stone or an enhancement to one's practice. And in the 37 practices, it also says, to those who desire a wealth of virtue, all those who do harm are like a precious treasure. If you are able to practice patience with a harmful enemy, then your bodhicitta will increase hundredfold. It is through the power of patience that your love and compassion will increase even more. And it is said that this is how the Buddha had conquered the 4 maras in the end before attaining enlightenment. So those 4 maras are the mara of the afflictive emotions, the mara of the aggregates, the mara of the Lord of Death, and the mara of the Son of the Gods. So the Buddha had conquered these 4 maras. For example, the Lord of Death, it is said, when you realize that the mind is immortal, deathless, that you conquer the Lord of the Death. So when you realize that the mind cannot die, then you conquer the demon of the Lord of the Death. And so now coming back to karma, therefore, now which is related to the demon of the afflictive emotions, it is because of these afflictive emotions and the karma that we accumulate with them that we experience happiness and suffering. If you don't want to experience suffering, you have to cultivate virtue. If you want to experience the happiness, the pleasures of the higher realms and attain enlightenment, you want to cultivate virtue. And once you have attained enlightenment as a result, you will then be able to truly help others. Then your mind is a mind of immeasurable love. So that is the mind that we need to cultivate in the beginning, mainly for our enemies. We first must cultivate love and compassion for our enemies, so that a sincere feeling arises in our mind. And that feeling then will develop into immeasurable love. And this mind must always be there. You must always sustain this mind. It is like your best friend. And from this mind, patience will also arise. There's also something called a samsaric bodhicitta. So even if you are in samsara and, for example, get married, if you sustain your love and you do not separate and you spend the rest of your lives together, then that is also a form of bodhicitta. Then as a result, in future lifetimes, you will be each other's companion again and again. Even if you take birth as an animal, you will be born as a very beautiful animal, like an animal that has a nice colors or a beautiful voice and animals that other people love and respect and so on. A good animal. So the cause of all happiness is loving kindness. Even the slightest benefit comes from the quality of loving kindness. That is why we always say, may beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. So if you want to have happiness, you need to possess love and hold on to love. That is your only cause of happiness for all future lifetimes. So there are certain individuals who do not experience a lot of suffering, who are quite healthy and they don't suffer in their minds. And that is because they have cultivated loving kindness in previous lives. And all the suffering that we experience in this life is the result of actions or karma accumulated with afflictive emotions. So the Buddha had said that whatever karma was created, we must experience its corresponding result precisely. So therefore, we must be very careful when it comes to karma. For example, there were also some who have, for example, survived the world wars, like World War I or World War II. There are some generals, for example, who still have not died. And that is because they have not accumulated the karma to be killed in those wars. But if the karma was created, even if you are a powerful king with bodyguards who protect you, if it's your karma to be killed, you will still be killed. So if the karma was created, karma is unfailing. If you trust in karma, then you will also be able to now protect or hold on to your bodhicitta. You will then be able to cultivate patience. If you cultivate love for your enemy, then real bodhicitta will arise. And that is really the main point for today.
Tata te chokan tanga mara te kare kare te che de te dada no de zor se be septin tam che che de sama je je ba de ma ye so kya la kor de ta gom ja ya re o ta ta no mo sabat se bi de gom je te ka ni o sama je ma ya ko do cha ja do ka ri na rang ge sem ne ro ta na ta ni mo be se te so ne te sama je je ba de ma ye so kya la kor de 마시 받을 나이도 기와 그랬더니도 가능지도 라빠들이 라고 정도데 다가 마시 받을 나이도 마셔리 여기 됐다 이거리 기와라 거디 그 때문에도 이제 마사타 담자 받을 나이도 기와라 거서는 그때 초과다 다다다다 람상게 계산은 줘야 대탐지 용지들 나이도 서 가르치면 샘되다 샘지 피로 서 로데 제보를 된 적이 요래 이 따고 계속 가는 마시는 제일 마시는 오 세비를 피고 세비를 어디 만나 되는 애들이 마상에 저기 정말 세비 탐체 링 탁발 피고 사람들이 뒤로 어디 만나 애들이 저기 오래지.
And normally in the morning we recite the opening prayers in the yellow prayer book. We just don't have the time for it right now, but the very first prayer is this Dak Dangma prayer where we cultivate compassion or love for our enemies. And then after that, this is followed by the next prayer that says, and for this purpose, I will, until I attain enlightenment, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. And so this line means to meditate. Until I attain enlightenment, I will meditate. I will cultivate immeasurable love. I will look at the mind and protect my mind from the afflictive emotions. For example, when you go to sleep, you fall asleep in this way and so on. Then secondly, it says, until I die, for as long as I live, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. And that applies to any kind of virtuous practices that we may do in our lifetimes. And for example, for myself, it means to spin a prayer wheel. It is my commitment to spin that prayer wheel for as long as I live. And then the third line says, until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. And that refers to any kind of short-term practices that we do, like sadhana practices, any kind of like momentary virtues or dharma practices that we do. But basically, whatever you do with body, speech, and mind, the mind is most important. The mind that wishes to benefit all sentient beings. That alone is actually enough. Even if you don't know how to practice a deity or recite mantra, practice the generation stage, if we just never separate from that wish to benefit all sentient beings, that is actually enough.
대는 용나 다대다 다들이 사촉스러운 조건 사촉스러운들이 상마대접을 가지고 거제 되게 다다다들은 말씀드린 적처럼 다 사촉스러운 거래리 다 마인바 뒤시들이다 루마도 용 트림을 하면서 제 동지들이 시랑 말이 제일 뛰니 다 가리고래 다 산지의 탐색을 제대로 문제 대세계 산속통을 와 산지의 탐색을 산속 톡지리 그리 다고 습지 탐색 다고 산지에 가서 정말 산지에 돼 다다 봐도 말이 또 그래 되는 차로 차서 잡던나 차로도 파주는 잡도를 탐고요 뭐 세도 다고 산지에 대대 차로 잡도를 탐고는 다 산속통도 만들시에 산속통도 만들어 kre랑타네 다 산속도 봐 이 도마들랑 피용 가려야 돼 두성지 사지 탐색이 사촉선사 잡도쳐 남카다 대지지지 남카다 그것도 사촉선들이 상제들이 잡도치 못하고 대지지 남카다 예송 이들이 위노 따와들이 레벨 따따따 따따 내가 토리 타도 사지 고망 도자 대리 배운 상네 따따따 사촉선도 봐주나 랑가 파들이 ramte 총총의 계는 사지에 탐색에 조카가 용거스 들어 속장이지 오게다다 수남 타서 가르치고 다음에 습지 탐색 비비체도 요고 습지 탐색 피고 서로들 사지에 탐색 조카가 요고 요리 그리고들 약간 강의 야다 이거지 차야요만 가구시 아까 체판나 대나기네 뭐하다 모람지 똑제다다 바로도 서바터들 모람지 똑 탑제도 뭐 그리 모람지 똑 저기서 인종탄 제가 톱지요래 탑도 똑 실내 모람지 똑 없어 들이 이만한 상계들이 이시가 또 없어 탑당 모람 들이 이시 탑당 이제 탑당 또 모람 이시래 대대자들이 있다 바로도 스바께 가라도 이제 요네 이제는 탑덕들 제가 이시대로 나도 좀 나디 자는 나지 이면 나디 메리 마제게 나지 이메 맞춰서 나베 손을 했다 그래서 내 배감들이 엄마 클래스 조카는 로바 그렇게 착착하래 로바 그렇게 착착 돼서 말이 당봉이 나다인 말아시 안에 내려 제외 거와는 장아시 출로 쪽으로 제외 오상지 내려 제전도 바꿔렇게 쪼리지 착착도 말 착착로 제 다때 하장 도다 제벌 대고 소 내려고 막 그들이 사촉스다 나딩 왕도 소소는 뭐도 내려오지 소소 다 들은가 사촉스도 좀 랑게 제일 마세 그리고 진짜다 사지에 탐색에 대해서 사촉스도 다보다고 잡도 제변을 쳤지 이렇게 쳤 주체야 요말 배다 사촉스도 주인데 사지에 탐색 상태에 주인이 저를 대성을 들이대다 랑게 루바가 다보자 거리 사촉스도 배 세계 오마시 그 세계 오마 소리 적고 말이 동동 사촉스도 소리 적는 거 말이 들이대 세계 오마로서 세계 누구 세르들이 배 루바 쳐보여 그랬대 너는 루바 거리지 까미 같이 통문들이 호주랑 마셔서 말하리 배순 말이지 이 성자와 시당이 속을 받아서 받고 말하리 배대도 속을 받아서 받고 그래 대다고 살못하면 이게 사족서 너와도 털어 나보자고 그래 톱지마 다 사지에 담겨있는 사족서 너와 들이 사지에 담겨 상태를 제가 착을 뒤쳐대 다 주준지 주인 뭐니 당연히 체분이 있으면 대다 보자 그래 이 뭐람 잡혀요 해야 돼
So when we say I will practice virtue with body, speech, and mind until I attain enlightenment, this is really when we enter Bodhichitta, the mind of Bodhichitta. So when we cultivate Bodhichitta, first we cultivate the relative Bodhichitta, And then we cultivate the ultimate bodhicitta by sustaining a mind of mindfulness or non-distraction. In the 7 verses of supplication to Tara for protection, it says, I prostrate to the mother goddess of mindfulness. So it is our wisdom mind, our mindfulness. And so all the Buddhas in the past have first cultivated mind of enlightenment, the mind of bodhicitta. And when they cultivated bodhicitta, they recognized that all sentient beings are actually Buddhas. The sentient beings are only temporarily obscured by ignorance, which causes the mind to be like an ice block. But the ice block can melt into ocean water. The mind itself, in the natural state, is actually the Buddha. And in order for the ice block of self-grasping to melt, we must never separate from bodhicitta. So that is basically what we are committing to when we take the Bodhisattva vow. And once we have committed to that, once we have accepted that, then we should also reflect on the benefits of that. What are the benefits of the Bodhisattva vow? It is said that the mind of the relative bodhicitta is like a vast ocean, and the mind of ultimate bodhicitta, which is the primordial awareness of all the Buddhas, it is that ultimate bodhicitta is like space. And if one holds the relative and the ultimate bodhicitta, one will find the wish-fulfilling jewel as a result. And the result is that temporarily one will be born in the higher realms, and ultimately one will attain the state of enlightenment. So once you have taken the Bodhisattva vow, reflect on the benefits in this way. And for example, think that if I cultivate just a small amount of love, it is just like I'm putting my money into the bank of the Buddhas. And so when I merge my merit with the merit of the Buddhas, then that merit will always remain. So therefore, whatever you do, do it for the benefit of others. For example, when you help a little animal and so on. And in that can never become lost, and you might even draw an interest. And so how it increases the interest is through dedication prayer or aspiration prayer. And we always speak about the 6 paramitas. And on top of that, there is 4 additional paramitas, so there are 10 paramitas. So on top of the 6 paramitas, there are also the paramitas of power, of method, of prayer, and of primordial wisdom. And so through prayer, through aspiration prayer, we achieve the ultimate result. Or basically, first through understanding the method, we find that all self-grasping has completely disappeared. There is no more self-grasping, and moreover, this perception of self and other as separate has disappeared. When you realize that there is no self, then naturally you will see that there is no other. So you attain enlightenment. And to attain this, you have to practice for a very long time, consistently, because we have these karmic imprints, these habitual tendencies that we have accumulated since beginningless time. Therefore, we need to practice continuously. There's this one story from a master called Drupa Gunlek, and one time he went to Lhasa to pay a visit at the Jokang temple. Inside of that temple, there is a very famous Buddha Shakyamuni statue, the Chobo statue. And so Drupa Gunlek, when he came into the presence of the statue, he prostrated to that Buddha Shakyamuni statue, the Chobo, and he said then, in the past, you and I were the same, but you then began to practice with diligence, but I have been lazy, so I still remain in samsara. I should indeed prostrate to you now. And so that is a very meaningful story, actually. So what happened to our mind is that we are controlled by laziness. We are controlled by self-grasping. But today we receive the Bodhisattva vow. And so today we will practice, starting from today, we will practice with diligence to cultivate Bodhichitta and the mind of all the Buddhas. And we will always hold on to it continuously. And we will not allow this continuum of Bodhichitta to become interrupted, this continuum of loving kindness. And in order for us to be able to sustain this continuum of Bodhichitta, we must practice patience. It is said that Bodhichitta is like lion's milk. Like a lion doesn't need to be afraid of anyone, so it's fearlessness. So Bodhichitta is like the lion's milk, and it needs to be contained in a golden vessel. Lion's milk needs to be contained in a golden vessel. And that golden vessel that contains Bodhichitta is the vessel of patience. So no matter how difficult it gets, do not get angry. Milarepa said, the root of the 3 lower realms is anger. Therefore, I practice patience, even at the cost of my life. So think about this. And so once you have received the Bodhisattva vow, you also have to maintain the Bodhisattva vow. And if you maintain the Bodhisattva vow, you will be connected to the great Bodhichitta of all the Buddhas. So in connection with the Bodhisattva vow, we will also recite a few prayers where we pray that we will never become separated from this lineage or this continuum of Bodhichitta. So then we come to the Bodhisattva vow. And so to receive the Bodhisattva vow, we must first recognize the preciousness of Bodhichitta. So you must have a wish to protect, to maintain Bodhichitta. So you must think, I want to have Bodhichitta, and I want to maintain Bodhichitta. And once you think this way, you have already actually received the Bodhisattva vow, because you have understood the quality of Bodhichitta. So now we will repeat that prayer. So please repeat in English. Now my lives will be fruitful. Having obtained well a human existence, I have today taken birth in the lineage of the Buddhas and have now become a Bodhisattva. Now whatever I do, I will engage in actions that accord with this lineage. I will act so as not to sully this flawless, noble lineage.
랍당 컨트롤 랍당의 컨트롤 야고 말서 요바체 랍당의 지와체 거는 랑 낭만이나다 강나 지와체는 지와체상 정서를 지와체 답보자는 그냥 지와 근주 저거래 그때 상정성의 좀 탑되래 그 뭐냐면 탑 그런 거는 뭐라서 나도 저도 로제 때 가디를 답보자야 찍마도 매도 맞지가 멀리도 통해 상태 이세 뒤를 다 제거 이제
So we have said I've taken birth in the lineage of the Buddhas, and so therefore I must now also engage in the activities of this family, of the activities of the Buddhas. And what are these activities? These are actually the activities that we have already accepted during the refuge vow. So on the refuge card, it said that when harm to others and its cause are abandoned, that is the essence of the pratimoksha vows. When benefit to others and its cause are accomplished, that is the essence of the Bodhisattva vows. So we have already taken this commitment, and this is the commitment really to observe. And then it is said that we must remember Bodhichitta throughout the 3 periods of the day and the 3 periods of the night, and in this way accumulate Bodhichitta. It is also said that Bodhichitta is like a golden chain. It can easily break, but you can also fix it, repair it easily. For example, when you get angry, and immediately recognize the fault in that anger, regret it, and turn it into love. For example, that kind of love you have for anyone, like a family member, for example, this love is bodhicitta, and this is the love, the bodhicitta that you need to hold on to and sustain. And as a method to sustain bodhicitta, we perform various aspiration prayers, all the prayers that we usually recite. But in brief, the state of mind that you should have now is that there is one thing that I must always hold on to by all means. Since I've taken on a precious human body now, I must by all means always hold on to love.
나부자야 그 제보요리 내내선 생리좀 그리고 주바공고 들라니 소비는 송들이 착각 적대에 좀 당. Give he such a boy, like a little chipan single water check. Oh, there is Zuba going to give on to the just no detail of your sheet. No one can leave Kadi, Shana, you can get the Tamacheta, can get the Zuba going. Then you tell the Macheka, Tabio Novelum, Lumare, the Tabio Mare, the Chudo number, the ratio in the number.
So there is the power of your own intention, and the first of 3 powers, and that is to think, I have now received the Bodhisattva vow, I must always hold on to bodhicitta. That is the first power. If you have that first power, then you will connect to the second power, which is the power of all the Buddhas of the 3 times great compassion, their great aspiration. So if you develop love, you can connect to the great love, the ocean of love of all the Buddhas. And then there's the third power, the power of Dharmadhatu, and that is samsara and nirvana, and all beings have Buddha nature. So that on the basis, fundamentally, we are connected. The basis, we are actually one. And because of that, through the path, we can achieve the result, which is enlightenment. So in other words, because we possess Buddha nature, all sentient beings have the potential to become enlightened through the power of bodhicitta. So it's very important that once you have received the Bodhisattva vow, that you also always hold on to this, that you always hold on to bodhicitta. Remember bodhicitta throughout the 3 times of the day and the 3 times of the night. And practice patience at all times. There's basically 2 verses in the 37 practices that are most essential that you should have in mind. And the first one is that verse about the spiritual master, how you should regard that spiritual master even more dear than your own body. And then the second one is the verse on patience. To those who desire a wealth of virtue, all those who do harm are like a precious treasure. So even when someone harms you relentlessly, do not get exhausted or tired of it, but practice patience. If you practice just these 2 verses, then this lifetime will become fruitful. Then in this lifetime as a precious human being, you were then able to find the jewel of this lifetime. You will not go empty-handed. Your life becomes meaningful. So with that, Dharma friends from all over the world, Tashi Delek.
그래서 다 모난 당제 기체 버들 모난 통통다나 모난 대부분 다 지대 저래 고도 디텍 접수를 많이 때도 다 또소리 들이 저 톱들이 삼제가 숨말이 모난 때 하다 기체 뭐리 그리 대부분 모두 같이 남나 조거서리 어떤 당통나 나나 변도 모난 당제 기체 뭐리 특별히 조종 모난도 또 ram지가 섭지 동네지 이제 ram지가 제가 요래 이제 모난 당제 아자 기체 뭐 요래 잠블링에 주로 삼제를 다시 데려서 사실은 뭐 토소
And the aspiration prayers are very important, and because these aspiration prayers that we make are the truthful words spoken by those who have realized the ultimate truth or the view, those who have attained the result, the fruition. For example, the prayers you find in the blue prayer book are very important, and probably it's okay that you take them. So those prayers are very important. For example, one prayer contained in that blue prayer book is the Bodhicharya Vatara, the Shantideva dedication. When you read that prayer, you will think about the suffering of others, and naturally compassion will arise. So all of these prayers are very important. So again, Dharma friends from all over the world, Tashi Delek, and you have now received the Bodhisattva vow. We still have to repeat. Okay, so let's continue. Please repeat. Today in the presence of all the protectors, I have called sentient beings to realize their enlightened potential. Until then, in order to please beings, I invite them as guests, as you gods, demigods, and all others. Rejoice by the virtues accumulated in samsara and nirvana, in the 3 times, and by the intrinsic virtue. May Jigten Gompo's intention, the boy of Vajradhara, that is the inseparable union of the 2 truths in the mandala of primordial co-emergent mind, be realized. May precious supreme bodhicitta arise in whom it has not been generated. May that which has been generated not decline, but ever further increase. May the Bodhisattvas practice virtue with the exalted mind, seeking the welfare of all beings. May whatever the protectors wish be accomplished in sentient beings, not lacking bodhicitta. May beings be inclined to the Bodhisattva's conduct. May I be held by the Buddha's compassion, and may even obstructing activity be dispelled in all my rebirths. May I never be separated from sublime gurus and always enjoy the glory of the Dharma, having completely perfected the qualities of the stages and paths. May I swiftly attain the state of Vajradhara. May all the aspiration prayers for the purpose of sentient beings that have been made from great beneficent Vajradhara on down to the kind root Lama on up be swiftly accomplished through the virtuous accumulations in the past, present, and future by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and through this intrinsic basic of virtue, may all sentient beings and I swiftly attain precious, perfectly complete enlightenment. May the teachings of Trigungpa Ratnashri, the master of interdependent abiding, the omniscient Lord of Dharma, who sees all objects of knowledge, be upheld through teaching, practice, learning, reflection, and meditation until the end of cyclic existence. When you experience illness and suffering and obstructors, then think that this is my support to practice patience. So it is a friend. And those who are dear to you, like your loving friends, including your cats and dogs, those that you love, they are your friends that help you increase your bodhicitta. So they are also your friends. So there is no one who is not your friend if you possess patience. Both kinds are your friends. Even those who cause trouble are your friends. So just stay thinking that there is nothing unfavorable. We are all friends. That is the method to transform suffering into happiness.
Thank you.
Om everyone. The weather is changing, and there is a chance we might get some rain this afternoon. So if everybody can be sure to have their windows closed in whatever room they're staying in.